Hey there, friends. Remember when spiritual but not religious was all the rage? Well, it's back. Like that 90s fashion you hoped would stay in the past. A recent Gallup poll says that 33% of Americans identify this way, and it's got me rethinking my skepticism. Turns out politics plays a role. Republicans are more religious, Democrats lean more spiritual, and independents are somewhere in between. So is this label just about political vibes or is there something deeper going on? Maybe it's time to give the spiritual but not religious crew a second look. The story is from Deseret News via Yahoo, published on September 26, 2023. And before I pass it off to Kelley here, I have a limerick here that's going to explain to us, it's going to put to rest what does spiritual but religious mean. I asked this of Chat GPT. I said, give me a lyric about what it means to be spiritual but not religious. And he says, a spirit that's free, not confined, no doctrines or creeds intertwined, seeking truth on their own, in silence they've grown, spiritual, not religious, they find. Take it away, Kelley.
That was awesome. I'm still not sure what people mean when they say they're spiritual. I ask a lot of people who use the word. Most of them can't explain it either. It just seems to be a buzzword for something intangible that most people don't really seem to understand. One of the good definitions I've heard, though, was being cognizant of the connectedness of all people and the world that we live in. And if that's what it means, that's a pretty good definition. But I'm not sure that we can agree what the idea of interconnectedness is. So it becomes a little nebulous on that end too. But I think it's a good working definition to begin with and explore through conversations with people claiming to be spiritual. It does seem to be a way station along the road to atheism, though. I've noticed that as the amount of nuns, the people not affiliated with any religion in the United States, seems to grow, the amount of spiritual people seems to grow as well. And I'm not so sure that that's people diving into atheism or agnosticism. I think a lot of that is people who are tired of churches, organized churches. They still believe in God, they still believe in Jesus, but they're really just sick of organized church. So they don't go on Sunday, they don't practice their religion, but they'll still pray to Jesus when something bad happens to them. And I think that's where a lot of these people who are saying they're spiritual are at inside their head, at least within my own experience. I don't have any um, research to back this up or anything. It's obviously just my own experience, but that seems to be where most people are at. I still believe in God. I still believe in Jesus. I still pray when I need to, but I don't need to go to any church. So, Cynthia, what's been your experience with this?
Well, when I first accepted the title and nomenclature as atheist, I ran across a joke that said that black people who say that they are spiritual are really atheists, but they don't want their mother to know. Guys, I've struggled with this whole thing about spiritualism versus religiosity, and especially being an ex-Christian that was in a holiness church that came out of a Azusa Pentecostal background, that liked to actually utilize terminology like it's about relationship, not religion. I think that some of us ex fundies have heard that a time or two. And I remember even being on, like, call-in shows, like Talk Heathen a couple times, and even Truth Wanted, where that came up. And I would ask, okay, so I can point and say that I have a relationship with my mother, and I can give you her name, I can tell you where she lives, and if you want, I can actually show that she exists. So I have a tangible,
Crazy.
right, right. That's a tangible relationship that can be observed, and that people will be able to say that, hey, guess what? This this relationship actually exists. And I believe Cynthia when she says that she has a relationship with her mother because she produced the person that she's in relationship with. Now, going back to this whole thing about spirituality, and Kelley, could you please repeat the definition that you found that's
Sure.
about spirituality? Thank you.
Sure. It is being cognizant of the connectedness of all people in the world we live in.
Okay, so that just, to me, if I were to hear that definition, that just means that I'm conscious that other people exist and I have a potential, I have potential relationships with people who happen to exist. You know, the whole spirit
Right. I mean,
is
that's
lost.
it seems a bit vague, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's lost in that. So
Hmm.
even if I listen to that particular definition, I'm like, okay, so where's the spirituality?
Right. How is that not just being in a world with other
Being a
people?
deep
Yeah, yeah, like how is that not just being like, you know, I'm in relationship with Infidel and Scott and Kelley because we happen to all be members of the atheist community of Austin, and we all happen to be participants of the nonprofits. And
I think it's more about having an interconnectedness with everybody, though, even the people that we don't know or have an actual physical connection to. Do you know what I mean?
Well, okay, well, but here's the thing. When we say that, you know, what can be considered physical or intangible, I mean, like, I struggle with that too, only because if we were to say that, like, I'm conscious of other people's existence, I'm conscious that there are other people in the world and I can be able to have a relationship with them, and I am aware of their existence even though I may not know them personally. But the thing about it is that there are physical means that actually connect us to others. There are cell phones, there is the internet, there is email, there is getting on a flight and flying to a different country and learning and meeting other people. And I know that there are other people who may even exist outside of this particular realm, is because there's already been things that demonstrated that people exist. But again, where is the spirituality? And I think that another issue that I have specifically with this whole terminology is because, Kelley, this is the first time that I'm hearing that definition is on our panel. That's the first time. When you are talking to a
You're so close-minded, Cynthia.
man,
Yeah.
Jeez.
man,
I mean, there's a whole world out there, Cynthia. Open your eyes.
You just got to go out there and talk to these spiritual people.
that's
all.
my problem.
You have
Or
to be
astrally
aware of them.
project or something.
Put some
You have to
signs
be
out of
a-
the bus stop.
Yeah.
You have to
All right.
you
Well, we
have
got
to
to
be
draw the
aware
line
of how
somewhere.
connected you
Yeah.
are to these people.
That's the problem. That's the problem. I'm not aware. But, you know, but regardless of that, guys, you know, in all seriousness, like, when you are talking to people who happen to have this nomenclature or identity of spiritual, and you ask them, what does that mean? You are going to get different responses. Some may come with you with the Kelley's definition. One person told me spirituality is breath. I said, well, can't you just say breath? You know, I mean, like, I remember when I was a thinner person of more flexibility and I practiced yoga, and they would talk about breath, and it was prana, and I guess like that was like Hindu for spirit. And I guess like there's like some connectivity with other religions, including like Christianity, Judeo-Christian things about, you know, the breath of life, blah 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 blah. Right.
Well, the word spirit has its root that means breath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like
Okay.
respiration, right? Respiration has your spirit right embedded right in it. So I mean, I suppose that's not too much of a stretch.
Sure. And I mean, like, and if you want to equivocate, you know, that I am spiritual, so I believe in breathing, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But the problem is that you have other loaded ideologies when it comes to saying that you are spiritual. And
Right.
it
Yeah.
normally has to do with being a person that believes and even maybe practicing something that has to do with, you know, the supernatural, which we can't even say with full confidence exist because we don't have any type of method to prove the supernatural exists. But I want to know what Infidel says exists.
This is for you, Cynthia.
Me too. Me too. I want to know that. Infidel, what exists?
This is for you, Cynthia.
Yes.
Well,
yes,
you
sir.
know. Sorry.
Thank you.
No, when I was a believer, I have to admit that I was dismissive of that whole spirituals concept. So I'm probably the wrong person to ask on what all of that means, because I felt it was a rather tepid position that intended to exist between two viewpoints. Now, one thing that Cynthia, you did mention was, coming out as an atheist and realizing that, that's an adjustment. I know for me, I spent a while telling myself I was agnostic, not really understanding that really isn't a middle road between atheists and theists. But I feel that's somewhat what we get with oftentimes with people who call themselves spiritual. They want to say, okay, they want to tell the religious people that, I'm spiritual. So, I'm not one of those atheists. I'm not one of those people. I'm close to what you are without really committing to anything. And of course, with secular people, it's, well, I'm spiritual, but I'm not really like those religious people, those people who, are out of their minds or whatever you think about them. I've got my own version of feel good woo. But as dismissive as I am towards them, they do point out one thing very clearly. Christianity is dying. What we're seeing is both Christianity and Islam in the throes of their own demise. It was mentioned earlier about the nuns. People have been leaving organized religion for decades. Every metric shows it. Church membership, the nuns, and Christianity's running scared. And the truth is they should be. Just Bronze Age myths just don't have the same relevance today. And people are looking for something to fill that void they feel that may be in their life. And this spiritual catch-all phrase has become an open slate for whatever sounds good at the moment. And that's what scares me. Most of them are coming out of Christianity. The pump's already primed to accept bad beliefs without serious examination. And my concern is that as they learn to grow out of these spiritual beliefs, they're just going to replace these with something just as bad and unhealthy for not only them, but for us as a society.
That's what I do.
Now, I'm glad. Yeah. Now, I am glad to see people casting off the chains of religion. But one set of bad ideas down, one more to go. And this is one thing that I think is a reminder of why it's so important what we do. It's helping people understand that you don't need to replace religion with something else. It's all a lie. Just put it to bed, just like you did religion. Cynthia, you mentioned being from an Azusa Street Pentecostal background. Man, you rung a bell there because, I'm from UPCI, United Pentecostal Church. And, so it was the same concept and getting out of those things and deconstructing from that. It's a loss of community. It's a loss of so many things that you were so familiar with and so comfortable with. And I get why people do it. I just don't think they have good reasons for it. But that's why, as I said, I think it's important that we encourage people to explore those, to ask those questions, as more than one of us has mentioned, of asking, what does it mean to be spiritual? To put those ideas in front of them so they can self-reflect. It's not a matter of confrontation. It's a matter of them thinking, do I really have a good reason for feeling the way I do? Do I really have a good reason to believe what I do? But the truth is, for me, it's kind of a situation, and I admit I'm a little bit of an extremist time to time. I know that may come as a shock to all of you. I'm glad you're all sitting down. But for me, it's pick a side. Either you believe made up shit or you don't. And with that, Scott, what do you have to add?
I will add, well, first of all, I would like to add, I'm calling bullshit, and not on what you were saying. I agree with what you were just talking about, but I'll come back to the bullshit. What you and Cynthia too were both talking about how, or Cynthia, you mentioned that some people are accusing these people, maybe accusing is not the right word, but accusing them of being really atheists, but they're just not, don't want to admit it. And then Infidel, you were talking about people that have the flip side, right? The people, it's people that are religious, that are distancing themselves from religion. And we saw this idea in the segment earlier this week when we were talking about a Christian organization wanting to petition TBN to not broadcast Mike Huckabee because he's talking about bullets and shit, right? And so so we have so the idea that they're here we're seeing this fracturing of this block, and so
excuse me, I just need for you to say one more time, bullets and shit.
Bullets and shit.
There you go. All right, go ahead.
Fuck yeah. So anyway, so there's this distancing, there's this arm's length saying, yes, we're Christians too, but we're pushing, there's some distancing going on. So now back to the bullshit here. And I want to illustrate my thought here on this whole, here's how I can sum up my perspective on the spiritual but not religious crew. And so I'm gonna recite a few lines from the movie Mystery Men. And this is a scene where the Shoveler and Mr. Furious are talking about another superhero, Captain Amazing, and why they just can't get as much press as Captain Amazing is getting. So the Shoveler says, well, if we had a billionaire like Lance Hunt as our benefactor, and then Mr. Furious interrupts him and says, that's because Lance Hunt is Captain Amazing. And the Shoveler's like, no, don't start that again. Lance Hunt wears glasses. Captain Amazing doesn't wear glasses. And Mr. Furious is like, yeah, because he just takes them off when he changes. And so that's what's happening here. We're seeing, yeah, we're on to you. Okay. Just because you take the glasses off of religion doesn't mean that it's not Lance Hunt still standing there in front of us, right? It's still the same stuff. And it's not, I appreciate, and sorry, I'm getting a little worked up here. I appreciate the distancing. I appreciate that you recognize that religion does harm, and that you don't want to be associated with that kind of thinking, that you don't want to be associated with that kind of acting. You don't want to be associated with that kind of philosophy and ideology. And I think that's good. But I'll give you another analogy here. I prefer Russian roulette players that survive over Russian roulette players that don't survive. Now, of course, it's better, and it's great when if people survive that ordeal, as opposed to not surviving it. But that's not the problem, right? You're not addressing the problem. The problem is the game, right? The problem is the actual action of doing the Russian roulette, and neither of those positions affect it. And so, if it's not, yes. There are things that come out of religion that are harmful. Subjugation of women, the mistreatment of children, sexual mistreatment of children, fraud, all kinds of things. And so we know that happens, but just saying, well, I still want to believe in something bigger than I still want to think that there's a power out there. I'm just not one of them. Well, that's the issue. It's the irrational beliefs that are the problem. They're the source, right? The other things are horrible, but they're symptoms. They're symptoms of this virus, and the virus is the irrational beliefs. And so if you, that's just my opinion, obviously. And so I think the spiritual but not religious crowd is just putting a Band-Aid on this cancer, and it's not going to heal it. It might stop your bleeding. It might stop, the pain or whatever, but it's not going to fix the problem. And I think that until we can, and I'm happy that we're moving in that direction. This isn't all a bad thing, but what I'm saying is that until we address that root cause, the source, right? Until we admit to ourselves that, damn it, Lance Hunt is Captain Amazing. Okay. They're the same thing. You got to treat them the same way. And I've been hogging the mic enough. Kelley, why don't you tell me what's on your mind here?
First off, kudos to you for bringing up Mystery Men, because it is hands down my favorite, very favorite superhero movie of all time.
All right.
Kelley got real excited when you brought up Mystery Men.
I love that movie. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. It does. This is more, it's still a symptom of bad thinking. A lot of these people who are spiritual, they're not giving up this irrational belief in the supernatural. A lot of them still believe in ghosts. A lot of them still believe in alien abductions. A lot of them still believe in cryptids. It's not the end of bad thinking. And I think that we need to maybe show these people that it's okay to give up these irrational beliefs. You don't have to pretend that you're still spiritual. It's okay to be an atheist. It's okay to not believe in spirits. It's okay to not believe in ghosts. It's okay to be a rational thinking person. I think that's very, very important that we set an example to people for that, and to let people know that they could join us. So I mean, I don't have much else to add than that. So Cynthia, you want to take it?
Sure, I'll take it and run it on home. So, one of the things that this particular article also highlighted, because it was really about this Gallup poll that talked about um, in July of 2023. Um, it basically revealed that the landscape of the United States is changing. Nearly half Americans, 47%, identify as religious, while 33% consider themselves spiritual, not religious, and only 2% claim both. And also, the data has shifted over the years as the proportion of Americans identifying as religious has declined by 7 percentage points since 1999. And we will include the Gallup poll for all of you guys who happen to be curious. It also shows how those particular numbers will show up when it comes to how you identify in politics, and how you may even, like, utilize that in other groups that are important to you when it comes to idea. But I think that one of the things that this particular article actually revealed, that the findings in the Gallup poll suggest that while religiosity is on the decline in the United States, the majority of Americans still maintain some form of religious or spiritual connection. And the rise of spirituality and the increase in those identifying as neither religious nor spiritual indicate ongoing shifts in the country's religious landscape. So it's going along with the trends that we actually seen and reported on this show. And Scott, I think that you said that I feel the spirit
You
telling
feeling
me.
it? Are you
Yeah, I'm
reaching
feeling
it?
it.
Am I
Yeah, there's
reaching
like
you
some
here?
beams
Yeah, I
that's
just
coming.
wanted to add one little bit
Yeah.
at the end here. You said that the poll was showing that the landscape was changing in America, and I think that this is a change for the better, right? I
Mm,
think this is what we're seeing here is uh, our country maturing, and and I know this is I know this is the nonprofits, but I want to share my favorite Bible verse. And my
mm.
favorite Bible verse is from 1 Corinthians 13:11. You might know the one
Oh,
I'm
shut
talking
up.
about.
Yes,
It
so
says,
everybody, hold on, we gotta say everybody in your Bibles go to
right,
first.
follow along if you'd
Yes,
like. It's when I
yes,
was a child, I spoke as a child, I
yes,
understood as a child, and I thought as a
yes.
child.
Hey,
But when
Baba.
I became a man, I put
Yes.
away childish things. And so when I
Oh,
see this
Santa
kind of
Tata.
thing happening here,
Yes.
we're putting away childish things.
Oh, Ashe. I know that's right. And just to piggyback on what you just said, Scott, because that really, spoke to my spirit. I will say it again. I said it before and I'm going to say it again, that with more knowledge of our environment and our universe, the need to use religion as an explanation will come to naught. And to me, this indication of spiritual is more of a wanting to have one's cake and eat it too. And I'm not going to balk at one if they want to claim spiritual, but through more inquiry and more use of the Socratic method, my favorite, spiritual becomes, in my opinion, more inconsequential. But what's not inconsequential, dear viewer and listener, is more for the nonprofits. So click here.